Wasn't worried about freedom. I was worried about people being turned into morons by TV.
Uh-huh. Oh, really? Okay.
See, we've never had censorship in this country. We've never burned books. And, there are temporary lapses, like McCarthy wanted certain books taken off the shelves.
Well, it was a cautionary tale.
Yeah, well, Eisenhower said put the books back. So it was a few days. I get letters from teachers all the time saying my books have been banned temporarily. I said, don't worry about it. Put them back on the shelves. And they come in and find them on the shelves again. And you say, gee, how'd they get back on there? And you keep putting them back, and they keep taking them off, and you finally win. But be very quiet about it, and don't ask for my help, because if I come to your town to help you, I'm a big frog in a small puddle, and they're going to hate me, all of them, all the people. So you can't ask me to interfere. You do the job. You're the librarian. You're the teacher. Stand firm, and you'll win, and they always do. Yeah. So Fahrenheit's not about censorship. It's about the moronic influence of popular culture through local TV news and the proliferation of giant screens and the bombardment of factoids, all the popular programs on TV, the competition programs. They don't give you anything but factoids. They tell you when Napoleon was born, but not who he was. So it doesn't matter about the date. You should never memorize dates. To hell with that. So we've moved into this period of history that I described in Fahrenheit 50 years ago.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
It is, if you're new, and maybe you love this book and you just found us because you're a Bradbury fan, it is Banned Book Month as we record this. Banned Book Month is one of those things, we were just saying before we got on the air, I thought, we're such book nerds. Like, we thought everybody knew that it's Banned Book Month. Maybe you didn't know that. So September in the United States is National Banned Book Month. Sadly, we are living in a part of history where a lot of our childhood favorites, including today's book, are being banned in American classrooms. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But before we get to that, this is a podcast where we talk about movies that have been adapted from books most of the time. We try to crank out a new episode every single week. And so that means we sometimes try to get shorter sources, maybe a novella like today, maybe a short story, maybe a magazine article, sometimes even like a poem or a song. As long as the movie has been adapted from some kind of literary source, we will consider it. It could be nonfiction too. That's fine. We did the Bruce Lee one. Remember, that was a great one. So if you have suggestions, all of this is to say, we always are looking for suggestions because it's hard to come up with a new idea every single week, even for Banned Book Month. If you have suggestions for books and movies that we can cover, next month is October. We'll be covering spooky, scary kind of books and movies. We've done many of them. We are going on 20 years.
Feels like it sometimes.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years. It hasn't been that long.
No.
10 years of doing this podcast. And so we are always looking for suggestions. So there's a few places where you can get those to us. You can meet other listeners of this podcast. And we can all have a gay old time on the, as they used to say. Remember they used to say that in the Flintstones?
Have a gay old time. Yeah, have a do time.
Have a gay old time. On the internet, in our little friendly little book club of the air. A couple places where you can find us.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. The episodes are always posted there, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. You type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. We have 2 posts at the very top of that page. They say which books and movies we've covered so far and which ones are on people's lists. But you can always leave your ideas there or talk about movies and movie stars and that kind of thing. It's a nice place on Facebook. We've managed to create that, which we're really proud of. We're available on Threads, Twitter, and Instagram. All those places you type out book versus and movie to find us there. And then we also have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spelled it out, at gmail.com. Please send us your suggestions there. And if you would like to get some stickers, please send along your address. We'd be happy to drop them in the mail for you.
If you really enjoy the show, I mean, like really, if you enjoy the show enough that you would like to help us keep it going, you can do that by interacting with us on the internet. As we said, you can do that by leaving us a review on the various places where you're listening to us. That helps other people find the show. And you could, if you're so inclined, you could also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. You've heard other podcasts talk about it. Ours is based on the fact that we've been doing the show for going to be 10 years next year. We have about 8 years worth of shows on there. There are some that are free, but most are from the last few years. So we have Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Jaws, Jurassic Park, a lot of biggies there. We have a couple of very affordable options. And it just, like Margot says, it just helps us get the books and the movies and things like that, the hosting costs for this show. And we want to thank Shane from Oklahoma. He's been listening for a very long time. He just joined as a Patreon member. So thank you, Shane. And I'd like to say thank you, by the way, to Christina, who left us a 5-star review on iTunes.
Thank you so much. I mean, it really means a lot to us. We know you are busy people. And when you take time out of your lives to, again, just like one of the posts in the Facebook group or, or to do something like that, it's so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to talk about today's author. He's a guy that comes up a lot. We've talked about him. Have we talked about him directly before? I don't think we've done one of his adaptations.
No, I actually did a search through the Dropbox and just wrote in Bradbury, and we don't have any episodes. And I think Something Wicked This Way Comes is one we'd like to cover.
Yes.
But it's not available.
And he's come up in our conversations in other episodes as far as being like an influence on a particular writer or a friend of a particular writer, a mentor. But no, I guess this is our first time covering Mr. Bradbury. I've always been a very big fan. He's somebody who's banned a lot.
Yes.
One of the things that I love about Ray Bradbury, and I did get to meet him. I think I told this story before.
No.
Did I tell you this story? Oh, I got to meet him. I want to say it was like 2007, 2008, somewhere in there, near the end of his life. He was giving an absolutely amazing symposium of, remember the Learning Annex? Does that even exist anymore? It was a Learning Annex thing.
Yeah.
Which before TED Talks,
Right.
people used to do these. The experts, they would get these people, they would get like amateur people and you could apply to do one, but they would also get like kind of big names to do these courses or symposiums for this thing called the Learning Annex. And anyway, so he was doing one about being a writer, and it was here in San Diego. I remember it was at Point Loma Nazarene University. I went. He was phenomenal. Afterwards, I think I had brought a book or two to a bunch of people. We all brought books for him to sign because they said he would be available to sign. So I waited in line and I had my book signed, and I want to say he flirted with me a little bit.
Oh,
now he was, let's just say, very advanced in years and famously like very devoted to his late wife and quite blind at the time. But one of the things that, and I have like, his politics, like, a little hot and cold on. He's complicated, but one of the things that has always endeared me to Ray Bradbury, always, and I will always, it's always such a special thing to me. The very first time, and I remember sitting in the classroom. I mean, I just remember it so vividly, and I was very young. I must have been, I don't know, like 7. The first time I ever read a story that had a character with my name in it. It was I didn't know at the time that it was a Ray Bradbury story. I was much older when I was like, who wrote that story? But it was a Ray Bradbury story. And it's called, I don't remember if it's in the Martian Chronicles, but it's called All Summer in a Day. It takes place on a planet where the sun only comes out like every 70 years. It comes out for one day. The rest of the time, the children live in darkness. And there's a girl who's from Earth, and her name is Margot. And she, I hope I'm remembering this right. I hope I didn't just like daydream all this. She, of course, has experienced the sun. And the children ask her, like, what was it like when the sun came out every day? What was it like? And she describes it. And it's this beautiful, writing, first of all, not only like description of the sun, but how a child would describe the sun, how an American child would describe the sun. And it's just beautiful as she talks about what it feels like and how it looks and da-da-da-da. And the children don't believe her. They accuse her of lying, and they lock her, I think, in a closet.
Oh my God.
Forget that she's in there because the sun comes out and they all get distracted by that and they all run out. So she misses the whole thing because they didn't believe her. By the time they realize, oh, it's just like she said. Oh, wait a minute, we left her in the closet. But that is the first story I ever read. And I remember like being in my classroom, like, does anybody like, I've never seen this before. It's so rare. Like, it's such a rare thing that we have a Margot. I mean, it's happened maybe twice on this whole show that we've had a Margot that we've talked about. So anyway, so for that reason alone, he's always had like a real special place in my heart. He's written some of my favorite works. We talked about, when we talked about the Red Shoe Diaries, I was saying it reminded me very much of Death is a Lonely Business, which is a favorite Bradbury of mine. And I read this in high school. Did you read it in high school?
Yes, I did.
Now, again, I was in a Catholic high school. I mean, I hesitate to use the word conservative because it means something else today, but restrictive, I mean, not so wild and carefree kind of an environment, my Catholic school. And yet a lot of the books that we read and had in the library that I checked out, you can't get in a public school in a lot of states in our country today. I didn't remember, you and I kind of chatted offline a little bit. It's kind of a bummer, but we'll get to that. But let's talk about this extraordinary man. He's kind of an odd duck, Mr. Bradbury.
I would say he's very much an odd duck. So he's Ray Douglas Bradbury. He's not a Raymond. He's a Ray. He was born in Waukegan, Illinois. He moved quite a bit. His dad supposedly was just always looking for work. It was 1920 when he was born. They lived in Arizona for a while. I put a few posts in the Facebook group. He never learned to drive and he didn't like to fly. And one of them is because when he was a kid and his family, and they did these long road trips to move, they've several times ran across people in car accidents, which, by the way, car accidents used to happen much more frequently.
Much more frequently. And they were extremely grisly because cars did not have the safety measures that we have today. I mean, imagine seeing a car accident where there's no airbag, there's no seatbelt, there's no anti-lock brakes. Yeah, maybe no roof. Right. It was bad.
Yeah, it was pretty grisly. And they came across several accidents. And he decided for himself, and he by the way, they settled in Los Angeles. That's where he went to high school. He decided, like, I'm kind of a space case, like I tend to space out, so it's probably not a good idea for me to drive. So he just was always happy to have other people drive for him. He winds up in Hollywood, goes to Hollywood High School, Los Angeles High School, and he started writing at a very young age. He literally wrote every single day, he said. Much like Stephen King does. If you ask Stephen King what he does every day, he writes every day. This man wrote every single day. At the time that he was writing this story, he would rent a typewriter 30 minutes at a time in the basement, would bring a stack of dimes and write. When he was in high school, he was fascinated by movie stars. He would wear roller skates and roller skate all around Hollywood, to the Brown Derby, to movie theaters, to meet people. He was obsessed with books. He was obsessed with reading, and he loved everything. He loved poetry. He loved adventure. He loved Tarzan. He's a fascinating man. He always made his living as a writer. There was also the Ray Bradbury Stories TV series, which is ironic since he hated TV so much. We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But just I would say to you, Margot, that one of the I remember about him is Bill Maher, politically incorrect Bill Maher. He had Ray Bradbury as a host on. They were talking about Anita Hill, I think. They were talking about sexual harassment. And he said, I don't know what the big deal is. I sometimes would tap my secretary on the bottom, and I don't think she minded it at all. These are the things we mean. Like,
he's a little all over the place with his.
He's a little all over the place. He never went to college.
No.
I mean, just some of the weird things about Ray Bradbury. He's extremely successful. Like, he's super, super, super successful. He never goes to college. He lives with his parents
Till 27.
until he gets married. He stays married. He stays married, as I said, famously devoted to his wife. And I mean, for all his secretary bottom tapping, famously devoted to his wife. There's never been anybody, like, no accusations came out, after he was gone, nothing like that.
No. I mean, he's
he
a product
had
of his
4
time.
daughters. I mean, just kind of a weird guy. Like, did not follow the extremely well established steps to becoming even a successful science fiction writer of the day. So yeah, just amazing the career that he was able to build, but also like super gifted writer. I mean, super talented, a very distinct kind of a voice. People describe it as being very Midwestern. I think that's fair, but I also I always experience a lot of California
Same.
in his writing as well. Just something about like the way he talks about, like in this book in particular, like the way he talks about the what is supposed to be like the television of that society. To me, it speaks of someone who maybe lives in Los Angeles and is like maybe a little close to that industry and has something to say about it. Fascinating guy, extremely prolific. One of the heartbreaking things that for me is apart from his like a couple little political moments was that his house where he wrote most of his great works was bought up by this architect in LA and demolished, which is so sad. Like right now, there's a fight going on about Marilyn Monroe's house. Do you know about this?
No.
So somebody bought, and I'm starting to wonder whether it wasn't just some kind of publicity thing that they went through this whole rigmarole, but this person bought the home, Marilyn Monroe's last home, which famously has remained unchanged kind of this whole time. And then like announced that they were going to demolish it. And then there was this huge outcry and all these like preservation folks came forward and they're kind of engaged in a little back and forth. It looks like they're going to settle on not right now. Today, it looks like maybe they won't demolish the house, but who knows, that could change. And so anyway, so in the middle of all that, I read about Ray Bradbury's house and I was like, oh man, really? How could you? But I don't know, perhaps this is someone who, I don't know, feels like books should be banned or something.
Real estate in America is, I mean, so many like corporations buy properties here and you don't know who owns them. And we both I used to live in California too. And I remember LA Story, Steve Martin's movie about LA. Mm-hmm. And he would say, some of these homes here are 25 years old. I mean, it's America's a young country and California, and especially because of the earthquakes and things like that.
Yes, you don't get a lot of old buildings.
Right.
Certainly nothing along the fault line that's going to be made of brick.
You're not going to think you're in Bruges when you're in California. I mean, it's pretty new. He lived to be 91, and like Margos said, he had a stroke in the last few years of his life. He was wheelchair bound, but he still wrote, and he would still write to the New Yorker. He was also I would say, intellectualism. He wasn't one of those types.
Yes, which I can understand that. Didn't go to college. I mean, look what he made, not going to college and not playing by the rules. I can see him being like a little anti-elitist. I'm sure he got a lot of flack for that throughout his career. So I sort of get that. But yeah.
Well, we have today's story. What we're talking about is Fahrenheit 451. We should also say, if you're new, yes, we're both named Margot. We're not experts on literature and movies. We're just big movie fans, and we love this podcast. We love putting it on, but we understand that some people spend their entire lives devoted to the study of Ray Bradbury.
Yes,
to science fiction, right? Or HBO films, even. Like there's
true.
This is, like, you can get a degree in anything nowadays. But so we should just say, like, we're just talking off of our heads. But anyway, this story, there was called The Pedestrian. 1951 was a short story of his. It was based on a story of a man that liked to go for walks at night alone just to think. And the police kind of take him and pull him aside. They question him, like, why do you want to go for walks? Aren't you inside watching television or listening to the radio or something? And he's like, I just want to be out in nature. It's also already, he has this idea of like being against television. It makes me always think about like what men don't understand is like something women would say, like, I'd love to go for a walk in the middle of the night. I can't because as a woman,
I was about to say, oh, that must be nice.
yeah, I mean the liberation
have
that I'm sure
experienced
it's
that.
relaxing. Not for me, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about Fahrenheit 451, and this is 1953 is when it's published. It's a dystopian future. There's been a couple of world wars, but there's some other in the background. There's this bombing happening.
Yes, and I seem to remember that there was a second civil war, and there may be a third one coming.
Yeah.
And so there's some it's late. It's apocalyptic as these things often are. We want to mention too that the book, the backdrop of the book, it comes out in 1953. That is at the height of the McCarthy House of Un-American Activities Red Scare. Also after World War II and book burnings. We talked about book burnings when we talked about, strangely, The Parent Trap, whose author, that was such a mind-blowing episode for us to do, to learn about, because that author was the only German author who saw his own books burned right in front of him by the Nazis. And so, I mean, that is just, as we said, we are living through such times today. But the Red Scare for creatives and writers, especially, like there were many of them who were hauled before these congressional hearings, their lives ruined for thinking, basically, and writing. Many drew parallels between that, of course, and what had just happened in Nazi Germany. Why are we, silencing these voices, sort of thing. So we have this really interesting idea. Maybe you've read this book. Maybe you listening to this have read this book. Perhaps you've seen the movie that we're going to talk about. There's two movies. We're talking mainly about the most recent one, which, spoiler alert, is terrible. I'm just going to say it.
With all due respect.
But an audience what I'm saying is, when this came out, it would have been, the audience right away would have known this is a book about what's going on right now. How is this different from what's happening now? How is what's happening now different when the Nazis were burning books? So it's a society where books are, everyone views books as evil. I mean, as though it's pornography, really, as though it's just of no substance whatsoever, something only a degenerate would get their hands on, and really that everyone would be not only better off, but actually happy if we got rid of them. And but they do have television. It's not a world without writing. They do have television. People can read and write. I just want to be real clear about that. They just have banned actual physical books. Other forms of entertainment that would require some modicum of writing do still exist. And of course, leaders, it's not like people are not allowed to write. They just don't think to do it because why would you? Books are gross, ew. And so these firemen are viewed as these great protectors of the public happiness and safety from these awful, awful books. And the people who are trying to hoard them are viewed as very degenerate sort of people. And our main character, we meet right away. He's walking at night, as Margos said, just like in the kind of study for this piece. He's walking home from having had a real good fire, burned up a lot of real good books, and feeling pretty good about himself. He comes upon a young girl who's, we're not quite sure how old she is. She's probably like 12 to 14-ish.
I thought she was 17.
Oh, is she that old? She might be.
Yeah, she's a manic pixie dream girl. That's what I.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their relationship, and I want to be really clear about this. If you've only seen this movie and you've not read this book, that the relationship in the book is definitely like an uncle-niece kind of definitely like older adult to a child kind of relationship, and not anything beyond that. So he meets this girl, and she's like, "Oh, you're one of those firemen. Like, what's that like? And is it true firemen used to put out fires and not start them?" And he's like, "Oh, that's ridiculous." Everybody knows Ben Franklin was the first firefighter. I love that
Yes.
part of the story. That Ben Franklin was the first firefighter, meaning the first one to burn books. Ben Franklin, of all people. But this is what the society over time has come to believe, right? So we get to hear by this innocent girl asking him very basic, simple questions. What do you do? Hey, I heard this. Is that true? Are you happy? As she asks him as they're parting. And he's like, oh, well, of course I'm happy. Everybody's happy. We're happy because the books are burned. And that's how we're happy. But then he starts to think like, well, oh, wait a minute. Am I happy? I'm not real. Oh, no, I'm happy. I'm definitely happy. And he goes home. And this is like maybe the most important part of the book, I'm going to say. He has a wife. The guy has a wife who's happy because everybody's happy, right? So he comes home and he finds his happy wife in bed, unwakeable, and next to a bottle of pills on the floor. And he realizes like, oh, he doesn't worry too much about like, oh, what happened? Why did she do this? And he doesn't even jump to the conclusion that she did it on purpose. He just figures he's like, oh, this happened. I better take care of this. And I can't remember, does he take her to a hospital?
I forget if he takes her to the hospital or if they come to the house.
Or if they come to the house. I don't remember.
She gets
either.
like a
But
full
anyway.
blood transfer and they pump her stomach. Her name's Matilda? Mildred, sorry, Millie. So it's Clarisse is the young girl, Mildred.
Yes.
And she's 30. They're both 30 and they've been married for 10 years. And they don't have kids. She stays home and she watches her screens on the wall. And she has these like things she puts in her ears to like listen to and distract her.
That sound very like earbuds, don't they?
They do. I mean, there's a lot of prescient things going on. Like people take up whole walls of their home to put up a screen. Like, yeah, they do that now. But they pump her stomach. She says she's happy, but she's clearly like doesn't know how to feel. I mean, they're both like,
yeah, there's this weird stuff in their conversation. And in many ways, it's an ordinary conversation, but in many ways, it's not an ordinary conversation. That he's like, yeah, I found these pills on the floor. It seems like you took too many pills. And she's like, what? I wouldn't do that. What are you talking about? Like, I would never do something like that. That's ridiculous. That didn't happen. And, to the point where he's like, oh, I guess it did. No, it definitely happened. Like, he's sort of questioning it. Off and on, he's like, oh, that's my wife. We're husband and wife and we love each other. But then, the next moment he was like, how did I meet her again? Hey, Millie, how did we meet? And she's like, I don't know. That was a long time ago. So these are weird things that you, the reader, like, how do they not know that? Like, what's that about? But they're happy,
right.
And you're like, okay, that's really weird. She's really, as Margos said, really into this. I forget what they call the television, but it's the television. And their television, another crazy thing, the television is interactive. So people sort of compete. It's very social media-y. People sort of compete to be included in the programming for the people in the story on the screen to like turn to you, go, Millie, how do you feel about that? And Millie would say, happy, and so there's this whole cultural thing about being one of the people who gets to interact with the family in the program. And then we get to see Montag at work. And that's all very interesting too. He's part of this crew of firemen. But of course, firemen are starting fires, not putting them out, because houses are fireproof. So it's just the stuff inside the houses that burns, namely paper. He has the chief of the firemen, whose name is Beatty, who is also sort of a mentor to him. And from Beatty, we kind of learn why the books are burned. This is the 60th anniversary edition and has a really cool intro by Neil Gaiman. Yeah, go ahead.
I have that as well. I bought that. I also, Audible has an audiobook from 2018 that Tim Robbins narrates, and it's one of the best audiobooks I've ever.
It's very good. It's excellent.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
Is he good?
So, a book is a loaded gun in the house next door. Burn it. Take the shot from the weapon. Breach man's mind. And so when houses were finally fireproof completely all over the world, you were correct in your assumption the other night. There was no longer need of firemen for the old purposes. They were given the new job as custodians of our peace of mind, the focus of our understandable and rightful dread of being inferior. Official censors, judges, and executors. That's you, Montag. And that's me.
She's perfect.
he-
Like, he really nails
We should say,
the voice. That I don't know.
all of them. And Thaddeus in the group said that he got from the Libby app, he got the book, but it was narrated by Bradbury, and he says he's a great writer, but who knows when you recorded it too, and like
That doesn't always follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta. So Beatty, the fire chief, from his mouth, we learn kind of like the firemen's purpose, their worldview, and we go with them on some of their assignments, shall we call them?
yeah.
And it's pretty brutal. I mean, they just go in and torch the books, like with flamethrowers and kerosene and whatnot. It's always, again, in the interest of protecting the public happiness. There's the word happy and happiness shows up a lot in this book. And so, although it is dystopian, you kind of, your brain as a reader is trying to picture like, okay, what does happy look like then? Like, what do these houses look like if it's just these rooms that are just screens all the way around you, and like nobody's going outside where there are trees? And happy? What's happy? Nobody's reading. It really makes you question that. At one point, they are led to the home of an older woman, right, who has a great number of books. They basically tell the woman, like, and they're not, a chilling thing about it is they're not really, in my opinion, they're not attacking the people too much. They're attacking the books. It's really about the books. And I think they sort of see themselves as saving these people from
Yes.
their books, right? And so with this old woman, they're not like being abusive or so much as like, okay, ma'am, we need to get you away from these books. Like, it's going to be okay. Don't worry. We're going to take care of these books for you. And she's like, no, I don't want you to take care of the books. Like, if you're going to burn up the books, you're going to burn me too. And that is what happens. She burns herself. She sets herself on fire while the books are burning. And the firemen are stunned. Absolutely. All of them, even Beatty, the fire chief, completely stunned. Why on earth would somebody, it's like, I'm going to torch myself to save the kilos of heroin that you've caught me with. It's like, it's just incomprehensible, let alone like the human drive to simply live, at any cost. And that really gets Montag thinking about, or I should say rethinking about these books. And is it that the point where he steals one?
He steals
He kind
one
of
from her
pockets one?
collection.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So she has like poetry. She has all kinds of books, and she's trying to memorize them as best that she can. So that's when his curiosity gets the best of him. So he sneaks one of them in his shirt or whatever and brings it home and then hides it as contraband. And then when he comes home, he tries to have a conversation with Mildred about it, but she's like not having it. In the meantime, he's also having conversations with his next door neighbor, and she's like, oh yeah, my parents and I, we talk about how it used to be and that people liked art and movies and books, and we talk about all kinds of things. And at one point she sticks her tongue out because it's raining and she wants to like taste the rain. She goes, do you ever do that? And he's like, no, what are you talking about? She's this love and this light. And then we find out that she dies. She's gone, and it's because the family moved, and because she was run over. By the way, happens a couple of times in the story.
Yes.
Once again, a car running over people. That's what he saw in his life. And
yeah.
yeah.
And she one of the things that she says, she doesn't have a lot of friends because people her age kill each other all the time. She talks about her uncle a lot. She's an uncle that she lives with, and her uncle is always talking about how he remembers a time when kids didn't kill each other all the time. Montag sort of thinks like, oh, maybe it was probably kids that ran her over and killed her. And so all of these things are kind of shaking him out of his took for granted that were true. But his wife is still firmly there. And the wife is such a critical character in this story because he does care for her, but she is not coming along with him in any kind of a way. At one point, Beatty, the fire chief, comes over. Oh, we should say, I forgot this part too. At the beginning of the book, Montag has been out sick. He's been sick. So he's been away from work for a little bit. And that's part of the thing that kind of gets him thinking about other things, right? So Beatty comes over to kind of check on him. He's been ill. He's been acting a little funny lately and asking questions about, like, didn't firemen used to put out fires? Like, that's crazy. So Beatty comes over to see how he is. And as Beatty and Montag are talking, Millie is like making the bed and straightening the house. And she comes across the book that Montag has taken. And I don't remember if she brings it out. Anyway, we learn from Beatty, because Beatty knows everything. And Beatty, we gather, has read quite a bit himself, that firemen do often pocket a book from time to time. It's not a big deal as long as you burn the book within like 24 hours or something like that. So you have so many hours before you have to burn the book, and then everything will be fine. As long as you do that, then there's nothing to worry about. So Millie's like, okay, well, we've got to burn this book. And he's like, no, I don't think I'm going to burn this book.
No.
No. And she's so, she is living the mindset of the society. And again, you as the reader are like, how does this happen? Like, is this America? What's going on? I don't get it. And eventually Montag encounters is he a professor?
Used to be a professor, but because they banned the books.
Named Faber.
Right. Because they banned the books.
Which is the name of like the pencils.
Oh, really? That's right.
Yeah, Faber-Castell.
Yeah, he used to be a college professor, and then it just wasn't needed anymore because nobody was reading. There's nobody to teach. But he mourns for that time. He tries reading with Mildred, and she's just not having it. And he actually sneaks a few books.
Friends. Remember?
There's a whole scene where he reads to her friends. I love that scene where he's like reading poetry. And one of them starts crying, and they get very upset because they're not used to being this emotional. Like it is something like so beautiful and sad that they get super emotional. And his wife is upset because people are going to start talking. There's also these mechanical dogs that follow around, and they know what you're up to, basically. Like they will take care of you if you don't fall in line. And also
they are those robo-dogs. Remember the NYPD robo-dogs just recently? No? You didn't see the footage of the NYPD robo-dogs? Oh, okay. I'll have to put it in the Facebook group because that's a thing now. They have robo-dogs.
Oh, no.
FYI.
They don't need that. So these dogs can find out, like, if you're up to no good, and the dogs will attack you. And
report you.
And so people are snitching on each other. And Beatty also makes a point of saying, like, look, books are dangerous. One book, is racist and says terrible things, and the other book is saying bad things about women. And, you're getting too much information. We're going to make it so simple so that you're not going to be confused. And that's how you get indoctrinated into a thing, is when somebody takes away all those things to worry about. We're just going to tell you how to feel. And so and he's starting to question, why do we do that? That doesn't really make sense. You're taking away a lot of joy in life when you don't figure things out for yourself. And so this Faber is a professor that used to be a professor, and he mourns for those days, and he's looking for advocates, allies, people to fight back, and get these books again. So he befriends him.
One of the things that Faber does is he tells us what it used to be like and how people used to be. I just sent you a video, by the way, of the robo-dog just so you can see it for yourself. And this is very interesting because from Faber, we learned what happened and how we got here. So I'm just going to read this little passage. This is Faber talking to Montag. I remember the newspapers dying like huge moths. No one wanted them back. No one missed them. And then the government, seeing how advantageous it was to have people reading only about passionate lips and fists in the stomach, circled the situation with your fire eaters. So, Montag, there's this. Okay, so basically, the people lost interest in the books, and the people lost interest in the newspapers in the face of television and other shiny things that were less substantive. And the government's like, hey, it's much easier to control the people this way. Maybe we should just get rid of all these books. So that's what happens is the government is following the will of the people. It's not like some dictator came in with this regime and said, oh, we're going to ban these books. It's the people who abandon the books first. And the government seizes the opportunity of a less educated populace to make it policy and culture. But Faber is old and frail, can't be running out in the streets after firemen. And so they create a transmitter, one of these little earbud things. I mean, in the way they describe it, it is literally like an earbud, like an Apple what do they call those things? So nobody looks askance to Montag having one, is what I'm saying, because just like today, people just walk around with these little things in their ears all the time. Most of the time they're like listening to television or whatever. So it's not a weird thing for him to have this thing in his ear, but his thing in his ear has Faber on the other end. Montag is going out and telling Faber what he's seeing, because Faber can't really get out and see what's going on, actually. And so they encounter, while this is happening, Montag has the bug in his ear. They encounter Beatty. Beatty and Montag have this. This is near the end of the book now. And spoiler alert, we're going to spoil everything. Actually, not quite the end. They get into it. Beatty realizes that Montag has been reading and tries to get him to see the error of his ways. And he's like, okay, we know what needs to happen. And to make this okay is we need to burn your house. Your house is going to have to burn. We'll get Mildred out of there. Don't worry.
Mildred squeals.
She'll be okay. And Mildred is the one who, we find out Mildred is the one who squealed, like Margos says. She is the one who alerted Beatty that Montag had this book and was not burning it after so many hours like he was supposed to. That's how inside she is. That's how much she's bought into the whole thing. They are burning the house. Beatty makes the fatal error, in my opinion, the literally fatal error of saying, you know what, Montag, you need to burn your own house. And in fact, here's a flamethrower to do it with. And so Montag burns the house, and but then turns the flamethrower on Beatty. Again, very important. If you've only seen this movie, he burns Beatty, not some other guy, Beatty, and stands there and watches the guy die, watches him burn, and then realizes, I gotta go. Like, I can't, okay, my life here is officially over. My marriage is over. My house is burned. My career is burned.
The dog whacks at him. The dog, attacks him.
Yeah. Oh, these dogs can smell.
They have a scent.
Smell.
Yeah.
Ay. So I think on Faber's advice, he runs away and he finds far, far away, far out of town, he finds this kind of secret society, kind of like a hobo village, if you will, people who are preserving books by memorizing them. So each member of this community has a book inside of them, a human story inside of them, the symbolism. And one of them is Einstein, and one of them is Jane Austen, and one of them is, Marie Curie, and they all have they're preserving these books the old way, the oral tradition, and remembering the books. Montag remembers part of the Bible, as I recall, like Ecclesiastes or something like that,
yes.
Right? And that's his job now, he's going to be the keeper of Ecclesiastes, because it would be mean to make one person memorize all of the Bible, I guess. And they're all different books. Anyway, so now he's meeting them, they're learning to trust him. And meanwhile, the government is looking for him. He's like, oh man, the hounds are going to find me. They have my scent. He's switched clothes with Faber, so he's able to throw them for a little bit. But he knows eventually it's a matter of time, because these hounds, these mechanical hounds, have a very sophisticated sense of smell, and the entire society is looking for him. He's like, it's only a matter of time before they find me, and you guys are all going to be in trouble. And they're like, no, it's going to be okay. Watch, let's turn on the television. You'll see, they're going to track you down and find you. And he's like, what? He's like, look. And sure enough, there's a running guy on the television, and they're like, we've got him. We've got Montag. And they kill this guy. He's just some random guy. To ease the society and, again, protect the happiness of the society, they have to have vanquished this evil guy who's been on the run. They can't let him get away, So they let the society think that he's been captured. And so now he's truly free. But now what, right? So eventually what happens is this other war does break out because, even when you take away all of the books, people still find ways to fight each other and reasons to fight, right? Eventually what happens is that whole society destroys itself. And all that's left are the few refugees plus these book people. And so now it is their job to go out and share their knowledge with what's left of their society, maybe make contact with some of the other societies who have not burned their books, try to repair human society in that way, because we're led to believe like this is an American thing that's going on. Like it's not all the countries, that are banning books. It's an American experiment, if you will. And so that's how the book ends, is Montag is alive. His wife probably died in the war.
Right.
But he's alive, and he is on this walking, sort of like Moses in the desert with the Israelites. They're just kind of walking through the wilderness, looking for other humans and trying to keep their spirits up and take care of each other, and sharing the little scraps of human knowledge that they've been able to preserve. And that is the end of the book. It's not the feel-good hit of the summer, but
No.
it is good.
It was giving me bad dreams. It was.
It's very nightmarish.
It's
scary.
heavy. It's very intense. It's been banned, and I could not figure out why. And then some people say it's anti-Bible, or anti-Christianity, which I don't get at all.
It's not.
It's not. And the curse words, and I was like, "What curse words?" And it was like hell and damn or something like that. I mean, there's.
I think.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of the banned books, a suspiciously large number of the banned books that we have talked about over these many years now, it's a book about one individual who goes against the system. And some people have said, oh, it's because it's criticizing communism, or it's, because people think that it's sort of communist, the society that they're in. Communism, anyway, I won't get into communism, but often, you and I have often talked about books that we're like, why was this book banned? And it's often a book about somebody who's gone against the system. And that's also troubling, but there we are.
People have said this. Bradbury himself said, and I have a clip from him from 2007, I believe, where he talked about what's the theme of this book. And the book is not about book banning. For him, the theme is television. He's the old man raising his fists to the sky saying, no, television is bad. It gives you, it eats your brains. It keeps you from thinking. You need more books in your life. You need more ideas in your life. When he was writing this book, read this somewhere, like television screens were like 7 inches wide. This is not when everybody had a television set. Television sets were very expensive, but they were popular. Like people.
And so were movies, and
Yes.
so had radio been at that point. And so it was easy. I'm sure it wasn't that hard to see, like, this television thing.
It's going to catch on. Yeah, I don't know if your parents remember. I remember my dad telling me when there was somebody in his neighborhood that got a television, and everybody came over, and it was they just looked at the static.
Yeah, not only that, when I worked on my, here's a chance for me to plug my book.
Yes.
When I worked on my book and I interviewed people who grew up in that barrio where my dad grew up, I can't remember, a couple of them had photos of when they got their first television, and photos of themselves and their neighbors posing in the living room with the television.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, this is the time so-and-so came over, watched the fights with us on the TV. It was a very, very big deal. Very few people had television sets. They were not in every single home. But as I'm sure Ray Bradbury, certainly living in Los Angeles too, he would have been extremely aware of the, not just the public appeal of this kind of lowbrow sort of, again, very not substantive kind of entertainment. He also knew that because there was so much money being made, he was living right in the middle of it. There was so much money being made hand over fist over this stuff that it's only it's a very short leap to make to people in power wanting to keep that money coming in and wanting to keep people interested in this kind of stuff. So, it's very much about that. And it totally holds up in that regard, when we talk about social media and things like that today.
That's the legacy of this book. It's great. It's fantastic. It's a classic for a reason.
He does such a good job of painting these visuals with his words. Like you're so in that world, and you see his house and the woman's house with all the books in it, and like he's really good. That's just the thing I like most, I think, about Ray Bradbury is the way that he paints pictures for you, things that don't actually exist in real life. It's excellent. It's very well written, but it is nightmarish and will bum you out.
It'll totally bum you out. I've heard for years. I mean, Truffaut did an adaptation for this book. I didn't see it.
It's quite good. It's not bad. And Ray Bradbury actually liked it okay. He famously did not like adaptations, did not wish for adaptations of his work, but he was pretty okay with Truffaut. Now, Truffaut, we should say also, have we talked about Truffaut on here? I don't know if we have or not. But he was a huge, not just Ray Bradbury fan, but he was a humongous devotee of Alfred Hitchcock. So this movie has Oscar Werner, who I adore from Jules and Jim, as our Montag. I hate to say it, but his German accent does lend to the kind of Nazi overtones of the.
I did see a clip of him with Julie Christie, and I was like, oh, boy.
And so here's the one weird thing about that movie is that Julie Christie is cast both as Clarisse, the girl, and as Mildred, the wife. And she's good in each one. She does a good job in each one, but it's weird. Like you kind of can't get over it. It kind of takes you out of the thing. The soundtrack or the score is by Bernard Herrmann.
Oh yeah.
From Psycho, like that guy. So it's a great score. Everybody's white in the whole thing, as I recall. But it's not bad. Like it's much more of the spirit of the original piece, of him having this conflict, him questioning, like, what is my relationship with my wife? The wife being, again, just like the perfect member of that society, or trying to be, aspiring to be. And his relationship with Beatty. Beatty's much older in that one, as I recall. So it's not bad. It's okay. It's pretty good. I want to say, before we talk about this dreadful film, that if you want to see a visual adaptation of this book that is excellent, I highly recommend the graphic version. The graphic
I was looking for that.
Is super good. It's fantastic. It gives you just enough to suggest like what Bradbury describes it's so good. It's super, super good. It's dramatized in a really riveting way. I was only able to find the graphic version in Spanish, which was kind of cool. So I read it in Spanish. Oh. It totally holds up in Spanish. Makes perfect sense, just as much as in English. Yeah. So if you're looking for a visual adaptation, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's by, let me get you the name. Hold on. Tim Hamilton did the adaptation, and it is superb. So don't watch this movie. Read the graphic novel by Tim Hamilton. It's awesome.
We should still at least talk about the movie. That is the podcast. All right, y'all. We're going to play the trailer for this movie, and you'll pretty much know what this movie is. And then we'll talk about the 2018 version of Fahrenheit 451.
Now, have any of you guys ever seen one of these bad things for real? We burned almost every physical book in the country. So by the time you guys grow up, there won't be one book left. Burn it.
What's wrong, Montag? Your vitals have been off recently.
Did firemen used to put out fires?
That's a classic lie. Have you used your drops today?
I want to know why we burn.
We are not born equal. We must be made equal by the fire. And then we can be happy.
I got things inside my head that don't make sense. Dreams that I can't explain.
Read. Before the men come back, do you want to know what's inside these books? Insanity.
They're lying to you.
What aren't you telling me?
You never do anything. You're just like Beatty.
I'm not like Beatty.
We have an important task for you.
If anybody sees me, I'm dead.
The danger is real and immediate. We need to get ahead of it.
What if I tell these people what you do? Words are a terror, son, I know. Knowledge is a dangerous thing.
The screenplay and the film are directed by Ramin Bahrani. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. This is his first big picture. It took him a few years to be able to get the rights. Like I said, he adapted it himself. And what do you do with this story when books don't, I mean, not saying that books don't matter, and I have actually more books than I've had in a long time in my life, but so many things are on my Kindle or so many things are on my audiobook.
True.
And I also should say, this is what I wanted to say before. Ray Bradbury, I would think, when I remember the 80s and 90s, people would have that bumper sticker that said, kill your television. Like, he was one of those kill your television people.
Definitely.
I was never one of those people. Because even crappy.
No, nor I.
I
love
just,
TV.
I love the good and the light and the terrible, the good and the bad. We all get it. And also, not everybody can read quickly. Some people have learning disabilities and they hear better than they read.
And also,
or dyslexic.
You just reminded me.
Yeah.
And also Ray Bradbury, for all his, again, he's complicated.
Yes.
He's not one thing. His politics are all over the map. And yes, he hated television. He hated drivelly TV. One of his best friends, Gene Roddenberry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I support that.
Yeah, I support it too. But yeah, he was very, I think we could safely say he'd have hated this.
Well, so going to, how do you adapt it when most people have digital collections? I barely have any CDs anymore. I still try to get a digital version of the book. So what do we do to make it clear these ideas are dangerous? And yes, we do have books. And also, I didn't understand this. I read an interview with the writer-director for Hollywood Reporter, and he said a lot of people would not give their okay to burn their book, like the image that's there. So their art department had to create whole new covers for some of these are masterworks that are included.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he also wanted to make it more inclusive, more diverse, which I applaud. And I
applaud that too.
I'm going to just go for the good things.
Yeah.
Let's say this cast, which I think it's a great cast. Michael B. Jordan.
The cast is excellent. Okay. The cast does an amazing job, and they are, I have no qualms with a single casting choice in this. The cast is excellent. Yes.
We have Michael B. Jordan, who's, I think, fantastic in this.
He is wonderful.
I hadn't seen Fruitvale in a really long time. He's really... It's a good Michael Shannon, who, by the way, lives near me. I see him all the time.
Oh, does he really?
Super tall. Sophia Boutella is playing Clarisse character. They don't have a wife here.
Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a wife. Okay, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Let's just keep going with the cast.
Lily
Who's
Singh
great.
is in this movie. Martin Donovan, he's been in a million different things. Candy Alexander. Why isn't she on my screen more often? I love her. Dylan Taylor, Graceling Kung, Cindy Katz plays Yuxi, I have two Alexas and a
Who
Google.
needs a wife when you've got Alexa? Are you kidding me? Already I'm offended.
Yeah.
I'm so offended by this movie. I don't even know where to start. It's a script. I'm offended by the script. There, I said
Keir Dullea, wasn't he in 2001? Keir Dullea?
Yes, he's one of our astronauts in 2001.
Yeah, so that's our cast.
And here he's a
historian.
He's a historian, and it's again, every single actor bringing their A game. He is really. I love his scene. I think he does. I think, if you just look at it as far as if you forget it's Fahrenheit 451. It's great. They're great. The actors are really, really great. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like the script. And look out, Margot. There's a lot of plot holes. Don't fall in. There's so many plot holes. Okay. First of all, I saw the trailer. I watched the trailer. Not knowing anything about this movie, not seeing anybody's reviews about this movie. I was like, let me just look at the trailer. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And I asked myself, just like you asked a second ago, like, okay, well, how are we, in a 21st century audience where we do have Kindles, we do have, we have so much digital media available to us. Anybody can download a PDF of any work of literature that you could possibly imagine. But then I thought, well, this dystopian futuristic society with all the tech, they could easily wipe all of that out. And so maybe physical books are even more precious, because of that, because they can control all of the tech. You can't control what's already on the paper, right? And I was very excited by that idea. And then crestfallen, I actually watched this film. Why doesn't he have a wife? It doesn't make any sense. Like, the whole thing about the book is that he has this wife, and the wife is so lost to this system that she turns him in.
Right.
And that's like the critical plot point of the book. Here, it's that he's just caught on camera. Okay.
Yeah. That and Clarisse in the book.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
I said, I said manic pixie dream. I don't mean that derisive. I just mean just that type, like a very sprightly young woman but she also is somebody that loves life and has only been taught, to seek joy in thought and in art and in nature.
And she sees beauty in
right.
things that he hasn't even looked at before. And so he's regarding trees for the first time and rain and he realizes, like, I am missing a lot.
Right. She's that. And here, now, is she a drug dealer? Okay, this is also, there's things I didn't understand, because she and Beatty have a scene together first and he buys something from her and then
It's very upsetting. Okay, so first of all, she's aged up because he doesn't have a wife. So he's got to have a love interest because he's cute. So, I don't want to see him kissing Clarisse, but that's what I get to see. Anyway, so we establish early on that people who have books, the plot holes again, people who have books they call eels for some reason. And so she lives among them. And we see her at various points where she's an informant on them. She's tipping off the firemen about, like, oh, I heard that people over here have books. Like, oh, you might want to check out that house over there. But then also she seems to be part of this group. She's also part of them. So we don't know, like, did they orchestrate that she's ratting certain people out for a particular, like, did they select people to kind of maybe throw off the scent of the, like, we don't know. It is never explained to us. So it's totally unclear. What is clear is she has some kind of a working relationship with the firemen because they know her. They've known her for a long time. They go to her asking for information and sometimes it seems like they're forcing it out of her. And so, yeah, she's running a black market. We don't know for what. It doesn't seem to be books. It's some kind of, she's like soldering in her weird little hovel of an apartment. I don't know.
Right. It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense. And then here's another thing. So, I mean, we're just go over the things that don't make sense. So then there's also this social media element where when the firemen are burning things, like people are watching it, broadcasting live all over the city, and they can like it and add emojis like you do, because emojis are going to last forever. And so Montag is like a rock star of that. He's like a rock star fireman. Everybody knows him and like they watch his burnings and whatnot. So then they come up to the old lady. We get to the scene with the old lady where he's going to swipe the book, right? And so she's got this cache of physical books. And and they're also burning, for some reason, VHS tapes. Like, why are you burning VHS tapes and movie films? First of all, you got nothing to play them on. They're not books. What's on it? Like the Olsen twins specials? Like, what are these? What are these VHS
I forget
tapes?
one of the ones that they did burn, and I was like, what? There's no digital version of that? Like you said, like they would have digital versions of everything. Like you won't.
Yeah. Oh, and they all have the internet. This internet is called the Nine, and we learned that there are like 3 books available on the Nine. So it's not like people can't read; they can read the books that are on the Nine. All 3 of them: the Bible, the Moby Dick, and
something else.
The third one, which is a really random choice. I can't remember what it is. Society, and then it's all about how people are happy. It's like the darkest, most miserable, always nighttime. Nobody smiles. Who's happy? What are you talking about? Happiness? Like we don't get to see anybody experiencing anything that they even think is happiness. Everybody's miserable all the time. So they get back to the lady with the books, right? So they're going to burn her books, her many, many books. Montag has swiped one. He's swiped Notes from the Underground, and she reveals that she's like strapped all these books to herself like dynamite, and she's gonna set herself ablaze. And before she sets herself ablaze, she reveals the name of the secret society that is preserving the why? Who? Like, aren't you dying to protect that secret? Why are you saying the name of the group like it's some great declaration? What
it's like
are you doing, lady?
Or something like that, but
Omnis,
but like her lips don't match what she's saying either, which distracted me. I had to go back and look. I'm like, what?
What?
Yeah, it's trying to go for
holes.
Blade Runner. It's trying to look like Blade Runner.
It's
reminiscent of that.
I couldn't
art
get the
direction.
rights to Blade Runner. What's going on here?
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it was filmed.
There's no mechanical hound.
No mechanical
There's real
hound.
dogs. We got real dogs.
Yeah, I mean they have. In the book, I'm going to keep going back, but in the book, like the kids go to school all the time. They don't even want to be home. Like they're just and they go crazy. Where in this movie, it's like these kids sitting in an auditorium, like The Wall. Like they're just sitting there.
It is very like The Wall.
Yeah, so it's
who's happy?
Nobody's happy. It's just they're obedient, but they just get it, and then it's all this, and then they have a thing. It's DNA that they could put the DNA of a book into a bird, and then the bird is going to fly to Canada.
Why? We have Canada.
I'm
because
sorry,
Canada
I'm not kidding
doesn't have
you.
Books. Does Canada not have books?
But the bird, like nothing could happen to that bird on the way from America to Canada. Like
we've read all the books that are left to humanity, or to the United States at least, and this is what we've come up with: is a bird that we're going to put a little gobbledygook, little like an earbud again, attach it to the bird and send it to Canada. We've established that they have other nations that they describe as the quote unquote dark nations who are going to take over unless we get rid of all the books. So obviously there are other nations who have access to books. Canada could be one of them. I do not know. They can't get Kafka in one of these other nations that has. I find that very hard to believe. And then this is the plot hole again. Like, how did these plot holes? How many people okayed all these plot holes? Is what I want to know. Have you ever had a pet bird?
No, but I've had friends who've had birds, and they get depressed easily.
My mom was a bird person, or is a bird person. She hasn't had one for a bit, and I'll tell you why. Because over the years we've had many, many birds. At least on 2 occasions. On 2 occasions, twice over our family history, we have. I'm sad to say, unknowingly, very much accidentally, ended these birds' lives with fumes twice.
Oh, because the oven
twice.
fumes or something?
Uh-huh.
Oh, gas.
Yeah, twice. The famous, birds, famously, canary in the coal mine. Why do you have a canary in the coal mine? Because famously, the bird is going to drop before it's bad enough in there to kill the miners, right? So here we have this bird. We have this bird that's going to save humanity by taking some books to Canada somehow. Montag, everybody's caught up with this Omnis group with the amazing bird scheme, and Montag is he's in this barn. He's going to set the bird free, but the barn is on fire. The young man who's keeping the bird, he's been raising the bird. He's dead from the fumes, but the bird is very much alive, totally alive. Bird's just fine.
A gas repellent
all kinds
bird.
of like all kinds of like farm equipment and gasoline and all kinds of tires, I'm sure, burning in this bird. It couldn't be better. Beatty and Montag confront each other for one last time. Because Montag, when he burned his house with the flamethrower, didn't burn Beatty, because that would have solved everything. So can't do that because plot holes. He kills some other random firefighter. So now they're in the barn, and there's the bird who's very much alive. And Montag's very last act is he opens the cage, and the bird flies up through the flames, through the fumes of God knows how many chemicals, up through this flaming hole in the roof of the barn, up into the sky, through the fumes of all the crap that's burning in the barn, to join a flock of birds to fly to Canada for some reason. And then Beatty kills Montag. The end. What did I just see? How can I get these hour 40 minutes of my life back,
at one time, yeah, Montag kills another guy. He doesn't kill Beatty, the real bad guy in this movie.
Why?
He always, and to me, he shows up already questioning everything.
Yes.
He already looks like, this doesn't seem right. Like, he already is like that, so there's no transition. I don't, yeah.
None of the themes are here.
No, and if you
what
look
are we
at,
doing?
And I'll post a clip at the end of the show. I find like the last chapter in the book and the way Tim Robbins reads it so beautiful when he's using this new language that he has to describe nature and their purpose and their moving forward. His vocabulary has expanded. His heart is expanded.
Exactly.
And
he's been reading. He's been talking to living books. Right. And they're learning from each other. Exactly. And he's thinking, how can I use the book, the knowledge that I have to help us keep going? Right. Yeah. I agree. It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and it's stunning, and it's what good writing is. Like,
but no, we need a bird. We need a fireproof bird for some reason.
It's just it's
why
it's not. I don't know. It's not good. I don't condone this. I really like.
It's such like, again, like you just there's any one of these plot holes, but all of them together, and it's like by the third one you're like, okay, I guess we're just rolling with this.
There are no
rules.
It's
just gonna go where it's gonna go. There's just no rules.
There are no rules. It just kind of goes where it's gonna go, and it's like the world building doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
No,
and
because Beatty, the bad guy, he's still alive.
Yeah,
he's still alive at the end. He could do all kinds of damage now. Canada.
Bird. I was just like
literally with the little boy who was taking care of her. Like the little boy is just like there unconscious with his arm around the bird cage, but the bird's just fine.
How you doing? I got places to go. It's silly. It's also just repetitive. There's a lot of like...
It's so long.
It's only an hour and a half, but they like repeat themselves over and over again. The mission over and over again to the point where like, yeah, we get it. But there's so much opportunity for like showing people spacing out into their phones or spacing out to their... and making that original point. All
kinds of things like that.
So many things like that, and they don't.
None of it.
No.
None of it. None of it.
No. It looks good. I mean, it's... Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be positive.
Said, if you forget, it's Fahrenheit 451.
Right.
Just forget that it's that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool set design. It is. And the acting is very good. I'm not going to say that it's not. I dislike the dialogue. I think the dialogue is stupid. Yeah. I don't like the script. I don't like it. I don't get the relationships at all. But these actors are really doing their best, man. No. I mean, they are really doing a good job.
They're great. And I like how it's trying to be more diverse in the authors that they're talking about. And
I appreciate that. I get that. I think that's how it would be. You know, and that is one of the things, like when you watch the 66 version, that it's a little unsettling. Mm-hmm. That we're just living in a world where absolutely everyone is white. So white that we had to use Julie Christie twice. No, and they're, again, like, it is fine acting. They're doing a very good job. You know, considering how clunky this dialogue is, they're really doing a good job. But it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
Even if you forget that it's Fahrenheit 451, it still doesn't make any sense. The bird and the kids in the school who are supposed to be happy, and it's like, what? And there's no sunlight ever? Like, what? I don't get it.
It's a miss.
There's one brief moment where I think the sun is out.
I can't remember that. I just felt I was watching like Blade Runner. Like I
It
said.
very much is like, I wish I were Blade Runner, but I don't. How do you not have the mechanical hounds? How do you not have her book?
Yeah.
There.
Go on. Don't stop reading to me.
Sir.
Next page!
Did you think that one tiny crime would be wiped out by thousands of good deeds? That there would be no punishment?
Little knowledge is a dangerous thing. You read a few lines, you're ready to blow up the world, chop heads off, destroy authority. I know. I've been through it all. Now, what do you want to do?
I want to burn.
Montag. My brother. Let's burn.
That was easy peasy.
Yeah.
We have an interesting selection for next time.
I'm excited about this one. Although I will warn everybody, if you've never read this book, also a bummer. Though it is excellent.
It's Bridge to Terabithia. It came out in 1977. The movie was released, I believe, by Disney a few years ago.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I haven't either, so I'm excited to check that out. And the book is widely available, in audio form or on the Libby app, so you should be able to get that. Please, once again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, all those places to reach us. I'm sorry, your dog is so cute in the background right now.
She wanted back in.
Please send us your suggestions for books and movies for us to cover. We have Scary Movie Month coming up. December, any holiday pictures? We've pretty much done them all. Just check the library first. But,
we really have.
But if you have other
truly
suggestions, please let us know. We'd love to find out about that. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Not Your Mama. And where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and TikTok at Brooklyn Margot. I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick for Threads, Instagram, and my site. We're going to play a little bit more of Tim Robbins and then go to the end credits. Thank you all so much. This was great.
Be sure they were there, to be absolutely certain that things were safe in them. Montag felt the slow stir of words, the slow simmer. And when it came his turn, what could he say? What could he offer on a day like this to make the trip a little easier? To everything, there is a season. Yes. A time to break down, and a time to build up. Yes. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. Yes, all that. But what else? What else? Something. And on either side of the river, was there a tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Yes, thought Montag, that's the one I'll save for noon. For noon, when we reach the city.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie Podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group if you want